Hi, everybody. It's MJ here, and welcome to our November Diamonds and Drama Queens feature. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to two gems, not just one, but two. The first one is an actual diamond called the Red Cross Diamond, and the second one is a so-called quote unquote gem, and her name is Alva Vanderbilt Whitney. Now, please keep in mind, these two gems are not related by ownership. I'm not suggesting that Alva ever owned the Red Cross diamond. It's just that they did gain prominence about the same time in history, probably within about 20 years. And I just wanted to do a pattern on the Red Cross, and I wanted to share about Alva Vanderbilt Whitney. So let's talk about the Red Cross diamond first. This is a cushion-shaped, brilliant cut gemstone. It is a very rare canary yellow diamond at 205 carats. It's the fourth largest yellow diamond in the world, and it's the largest canary yellow diamond in the world. Now, what I mean by that is there's a difference between yellow diamonds and canary yellow. Canary yellow diamonds is a higher grade than just yellow. So to give you an idea of its relative size to other diamonds and to the human hand, I wanted to introduce you to the Millennium Star. The Millennium Star diamond is 203 carats. This is the Millennium Star, just sitting all beautiful all by itself. And this is the Millennium Star held in hand. Now, look at the size of this monster. It looks like it's about sort of that first knuckle of this person's finger of their hand. It is, gosh, maybe 2 or 3 inches from tip to bottom. Just stunning. So at 203 carats, the Millennium Star is this size. So you can imagine what the Red Cross diamond might look like. Now, the Red Cross diamond is a canary yellow, very similar in color to this gemstone. This is the Tiffany yellow, and it is the 14th largest yellow diamond at 128.34 carats. If you remember, the Tiffany diamond is the diamond that was in the piece of jewelry that Holly Golightly wore in Breakfast at Tiffany's. If you ever see a picture of a beautiful cushion, this beautiful gemstone with a little bird on top of it, it's called Bird on a Rock. And I think it was a Jean Schlumberger design for Tiffany. And it's a very famous design that implements this particular gemstone. So in other words, the Red Cross diamond is somewhere between the Millennium Star, this fabulous pear-shaped gemstone diamond, and the Tiffany yellow. So you can see what a beast this thing was. We've talked about before how diamonds come to be colorful diamonds, or as we call them, fancy diamonds. Yellow diamonds are that color due to the presence of nitrogen atoms in a very special configuration. Now, one of the things I learned when doing the research for this particular feature is that 98% of all naturally occurring diamonds have some nitrogen impurities in them, but they are arranged in a way that doesn't absorb light or affect their color. So even colorless diamonds have some nitrogen in them. However, canary yellow diamonds have nitrogen atoms scattered as single atoms, not groups, but single atoms throughout the crystal structure, and they absorb visible light in the blue end of the spectrum, which produces an intense yellow color known as canary yellow. Now, keep in mind, the occurrence of this type of configuration in diamonds happens only in about 1/10 of 1% of all natural diamonds. So in other words, canary yellow diamonds are extremely, extremely rare. These diamonds also tend to show fluorescence. And what I mean by that is that it's a peculiar property of diamonds in that it has an ability to absorb light energy when exposed to brilliant light, and then subsequently emit this light in the dark, making the stone self-luminous. So the Red Cross diamond has been said to be more luminous than a white diamond in artificial light and then in the dark. Again, a very, very rare stone. And you know what? No one knows where it is. No one knows where it is. Like so many famous diamonds, it has disappeared into a vault of an unknown buyer or a buyer known only to a few and won't be seen again until it pops up at another auction or is donated to a museum collection. So the Red Cross diamond gets its name after it was sold at a Christie's auction in 1918. So what was happening in 1918? It was, in the depths of World War I. The proceeds went to the British Red Cross Society and the Order of St. John Society, which was an organization, a humanitarian organization founded to create hospitals. This gem was donated by a group of diamond dealing firms who used to purchase the output of the De Beers Diamond Mining Company. And they did this as part of an effort to raise money for the war effort. So as a result, the Red Cross diamond is thought to have originated in the De Beers Kimberley mines of South Africa. And this is a picture of the De Beers Kimberley mine. Does this look familiar to you? Those of you who have been through my holiday jewel box or have been in classes where we've talked about diamonds, I usually put up this picture, which is the opening of a kimberlite pipe. A kimberlite pipe is the mouth of a supersonic volcano that brings gemstones, diamonds specifically, from the mantle of the earth all the way through the crust and out to the surface. It's a supersonic explosion. It's very powerful, and it leaves these kinds of impressions. So this is actually the Kimberley mine, or part of the Kimberley mine at the De Beers site in South Africa. So the story goes that the diamond changed hands over the next 50 years, from 1918 to 1968. And it was reportedly purchased at that auction by a member of the European, a member of a European royal family, and eventually ended up in the hands of an American businessman in the late 1960s. In the 1970s, it went up for auction in 1973. However, it was withdrawn from the sale when the highest bid of 82,000 pounds, because it was in England, was far lower than the reserve price of 2 million pounds. So clearly people weren't in the market for canary yellow diamonds at the time. Then in 1977, the same gemstone went up for auction in Geneva, Switzerland, and it appears to have been purchased by an anonymous buyer whose identity remains a mystery to this day. So my question is, could it be in your treasure chest? If it is, call me. So another reason that it is called the Red Cross and that the name is appropriate is that you can clearly see a stylized cross when you look at the diamond down through the table. And that's one of the things I wanted to emphasize in our design, in our pattern this month, as well as these little triangles that touch at the tip from the top to the bottom. So let's talk about our second quote unquote gem. I have been reading a couple of books, one called A Season of Splendor by Greg King, and a second book called Fortune's Children, The Fall of the House of Vanderbilt by Arthur T. Vanderbilt II. And these two books provide a lot of detail about Alva Vanderbilt's life. And really in this particular feature, what I want to do is just talk about her early part of her life as a young girl, and then as a young married, and then an event that happened in her life that changed everything. It actually changed New York society as we know it. We're going to talk about Alva and some of the things that she accomplished in subsequent features in 2022, including the fact that she had a daughter named Consuelo Vanderbilt, and who became a countess in European aristocracy when she married somebody in the European aristocracy. And then Alva also went on to become an icon in the fight for women's rights to vote. Let's start out at the beginning. Alva Smith was born in Mobile, Alabama in 1853. Her father, Murray Smith, was a lawyer, mainly representing the cotton interests of his wife's family in Kentucky. They did own slaves. They were prominent and they were very wealthy. In 1859, when Alva was just 7 years old, the family moved the household to New York City to take advantage of the railroad industries there, of which Cornelius Commodore Vanderbilt figured prominently, and was probably how she fell in with that lot. The family was ostracized, really ran into some headwinds in New York society since they brought their slaves with them to the city. And obviously, being a city in the North, that was deeply, deeply frowned upon, and as it should be. And even more so than after the Civil War. So after the Civil War, Murray moved his family to Paris. Now, Paris was entering its magnificent resurgence under the Second Empire of Napoleon III and his consort, Empress Eugenie. There were parties and balls and splendid marble houses along the wide new boulevards and sparkling diamonds of the jewel houses like the new Maison of Cartier, as well as gorgeous gowns by Worth. I wanted to show you a couple of images of some of the gorgeous ball gowns that the haute couture house of Worth in Paris created. And again, this is the environment that little Alva grew up in from the time she was 7 until she was about 18. This was her milieu. This beautiful, gorgeous gold gown with all of the embroidery on it. Here's another ball gown with a nice, beautiful train. And here's another. I love this. It looks like satin that is covered with soft pastels and then beaded at the very bottom. Look at the little taffeta at the sleeves. A beautiful, looks like a velvet teal dress. This is a beauty. Weird sleeves, though. I'm not quite sure I like those sleeves. This is lovely, gold with all kinds of embroidery on it. The sleeves again, just crazy. Here are two gowns that were designed by Worth. Again, you can see kind of the low plunging neckline, the very tiny waists, the bustles that make for the wide hips. And then it just showcases all of the embroidery and the embellishment that they put on their gorgeous dresses. And here is, I think, one of my favorites, just truly, truly remarkable. Looks like something Queen Elizabeth I would wear. So the Smiths returned to New York City in 1870, just before the stock market crashed on Wall Street. In rapid succession, Alva's mother died, her father's money completely disappeared, and the family nearly went bankrupt. And so Alva's entire goal at that time was to find a wealthy husband. And due to her pedigree, she had family members that were former members of the U.S. House of Representatives. She had a Kentucky governor in her past. There were government officials, European aristocrats. They were early American immigrants. She was perfectly suited for presentation to New York society, and she dove in wholeheartedly. One of the things that a lot of people felt they needed to comment on was that she wasn't beautiful. In fact, this woman, Mrs. Stuyvesant Fish, a social rival, suggested that Alva actually looked like an intelligent Pekingese. Oh my word, that's just rude. But what Alva was smart, vivacious, witty, a little bit sarcastic, ambitious, a little bit abrasive, and absolutely fearless. Some of the people in her circle said that Alva was happiest when she was pitting herself against the rest of the world. She loved to see herself as a pioneer, to make others bend to her will, and to have them follow her in the end, meek and sheep-like. So when she met William Kissam Vanderbilt, the grandson of the formidable Cornelius, quote unquote, Commodore Vanderbilt, she put him in her crosshairs, and he was transfixed by the outspoken, wily young Southerner. Now, William was the son of Billy Vanderbilt, Commodore Vanderbilt's much abused son. And here's a picture of Commodore Vanderbilt. Billy, I don't have a picture of Billy up here at this point, but Billy was ridiculed and bullied, but everyone was ridiculed and bullied by Commodore Vanderbilt. He was a loathsome man. I have to tell you, I was reading a couple of years ago a book about him. I love reading biography. And for a while there, a couple of years ago, I was reading books about Andrew Carnegie, Rockefeller. If you ever read Titan, all about Rockefeller, it's a wonderful book. J.P. Morgan. And so I picked up a book about Vanderbilt because they were of the same era. And about 100, 120 pages in, I'm like, I am so disgusted with this man. I closed the book and put it on the shelf, and I haven't picked it up since. This is a guy, I swear, he must have been a sociopath, if not a psychopath. He actually made his wife, the woman who bore him 11 children, 8 daughters and 3 sons, pay rent to live in her own house. So she ended up creating a boarding house in their home to help pay the rent, quote unquote. He loved seeing people ruined. He took great pleasure in ruining his competition. He started out in steamboats. He wanted to be the fastest steamboat line in existence. And so what he did is he drove his steamboats to the point to which the boilers would explode, and ended up injuring thousands and thousands of people and killing hundreds and hundreds of people along the rivers of North America. Then he went into the railroads. When he felt that, he had done conquering the waterways, he needed to find a way to transport people between waterways, and the railway was the best way to do that. And so he ended up buying a bunch of railroads, and the same thing. His passengers basically rode in squalor. It was a terrible ride. And in many cases, his passengers never arrived at their destination because the train would jump the tracks because of some faulty mechanism, either with the train itself or with the tracks. And many people were killed because of Commodore Vanderbilt's lack of concern for safety and his need to be the very first. So again, Commodore being a loathsome man, but he finally died. I was reading a little bit in one of these books, in that the press gathered around his house for weeks and months on a death watch. And this guy, Commodore Vanderbilt, basically held on just to spite the press and spite everyone. When he finally died, they did an autopsy, and they were shocked at how withered his internal organs were. He should have been dead a long time ago. And one of the things they mentioned was that his heart was much smaller than any human's heart. And, maybe that was kind of a spiritual comment on him as well. He died with a legacy of $105 million in the late 1870s. And he left 95 million of that to his son, Billy. Everybody else got just crumbs from Commodore Vanderbilt. Again, he was causing trouble even in death. And so William Kissam Vanderbilt, this guy right here, was the son of Billy, who got all that money. So you can see that obviously William Kissam Vanderbilt would come into a lot of money as well. So I just wanted to let you know too that William Kissam Vanderbilt, the son of Billy Vanderbilt, also was the brother of George Vanderbilt. And George Vanderbilt was the guy who built Biltmore in Asheville, North Carolina. So these two came together. Alva had no money, but had social standing. William had no social standing, but had tons of money. And why did he have no social standing? Because of a woman named Carolyn Astor. Carolyn Astor was the gatekeeper of New York society, but Alva had a plan to break into New York society, which was so controlled by Carolyn Astor, by using her husband's money. Let's talk about the party that broke the Mrs. Astor. Carolyn Astor was the self-proclaimed arbiter of New York society starting around the 1880s and throughout the period known as the Gilded Age. Her social secretary, a guy by the name of Ward McAllister, was the gatekeeper for her, suggesting the invitation list to all of her balls and parties and keeping it highly exclusive. The term for New York society unofficially became the 400, but it stuck. Why 400? Well, it was rumored that that was the number of couples who could fit into Mrs. Astor's ballroom. So the hypocrisy here is that while Carolyn Astor was dictating what and who was proper for New York society, her husband was hosting sex parties for his friends aboard his yacht. Attendees included underage girls that he would offer to his friends. So talk about the hypocrisy of the Gilded Age. Mrs. Astor would occasionally throw the Vanderbilts, Alva and William, a crumb by inviting them to a party every now and then. But Alva wasn't satisfied with the crumbs. She wanted to own the bakery, and she had a plan. Step one in her plan was to build a fabulously expensive and extravagant mansion at 6600 Fifth Avenue. She built a French-style chateau. The second step was that she announced that she would throw one of the most extravagant costume balls New York had ever witnessed to inaugurate her new house. The plan for the party was to have it occur on a date after Easter, when the usual social season had ended. So therefore, no competition, a bold move. Then she fed details to the press. She said that there would be 1,300 guests. She said that there would be an elaborate 8-course dinner. There would be 2 orchestras. There would be thousands of out-of-season orchids and roses. And newspapers set an estimate for the cost of the single evening at a staggering $5 million in today's currency. The buzz actually grew into a frenzy. City papers said it would be the social event of the decade, and hundreds were clamoring for invitations. Costumers, milliners, and dressmakers all up and down the eastern seaboard were preparing outrageous and extravagant garments. Now, the most excited potential guest was Carolyn Astor's daughter, Carrie. She had been practicing the quadrille for weeks with her friends. So sweet little Carrie was practicing for weeks and weeks and weeks, waiting for her invitation, but the invitation never came. Little Carrie went to her mother and asked why an invitation hadn't come to the Vanderbilt's ball. And Carolyn realized that there was a game afoot. Now, Alva maintained that because she had never been called on at home or received by Mrs. Astor at the Astor residence, it would be impossible for her to extend an invitation to someone she'd never met. And so Carolyn realized she'd been outplayed. A few weeks before the event, she had one of her liverymen drive her to the Vanderbilt's palatial home and had a footman present her card to Alva's footmen. The 2 women never met face to face, but the white flag had been raised. The calling card signaled Carolyn's social surrender. That afternoon, a Vanderbilt footman delivered an engraved invitation to Mrs. Astor's mansion. Alva had won. On March 26, 1883, a crowd gathered outside of 665th Avenue, including a contingent of New York City police. At 8:30, footmen wearing powdered white wigs and surcoats and knee breeches and silk stockings cleared the sidewalk and unrolled a gold-edged maroon carpet that extended from the front door to the edge of the street. Guests started to arrive at about 10 p.m. The New York Tribune said, "Out stepped what appeared to be the ghosts of all the great dead since the world began. Joan of Arc, complete with silver chain mail. Christopher Columbus, Louis XVI, Queen Elizabeth I with a bright red wig, the goddess Diana, Daniel Boone, and a bouillabaisse of kings, queens, fairies, toreadors, and gypsies followed." Now, Mrs. Astor herself arrived as a Venetian princess with nearly all of her diamonds. She wore a tiara with diamond stars, diamond drop earrings, rows of immense collet diamonds in the necklaces, the diamond bow and lover's knot brooches on her bodice, a diamond stomacher ornamented with pearls, clusters of diamonds and bracelets around the wrists of her white gloves, all shimmering and sparkling as she moved about the room. What's interesting is that Alva herself came as a Venetian princess. So I wonder who had spies in whose house and figured out that so-and-so was coming as a Venetian princess and so decided to outshine the competition. Alva's gown was yellow and white brocade with blue satin, and it was designed by Worth of Paris. Remember those beautiful garments we were looking at earlier? The underskirt of the gown, revealed by an inverted V-shaped split in the overskirt, was in white and yellow brocade and graduated in rows of shifting color from deep orange to light canary. It was filled with iridescent beads and pearls. Her blue satin bodice was woven with gold thread. Her flowing sleeves were of transparent gold tissue. Her train was light blue satin, embroidered with gold designs and lined with crimson velvet. She wore on her head a velvet diadem covered in jewels and dominated by a jeweled peacock. The jewels that Alva wore included Catherine the Great's pearls, ropes of Catherine the Great's pearls. And she also wore diamond and pearl brooches once owned by Napoleon III's consort, Empress Eugenie. Others came as US presidents, King Lear, Persian and Egyptian princesses, Richard the Lionhearted, Appius Claudius, Dutch maidens, Arab sheiks, Sinbad the Sailor, Little Bo Peep, Mary, Mary, quite contrary, court jesters, troubadours, the evening star. This gal even came as a hornet, and even as the electric light. This actually is a Vanderbilt who had a dress designed by Worth, which was electrified with a battery that was hidden in its bustle. And she carried a torch, a lantern that she held aloft, which was illuminated. Truly amazing. And then this weird thing, this is the cat lady who actually wore a stuffed cat as a hat. Ew, yuck. There was drinking, dinner, and dancing under the potted palms, electric sconces, glowing mirrors, and polished marble, strings of bougainvillea hung with Chinese lanterns and artificial fountains. Here's an image of a table actually set for dinner at the Biltmore. And I want to tell you a little bit about the dinner that might have been served at Alva's party. These big, giant special dinners often had 8 courses. It would start with oysters on the half shell, caviar, soups of consomme and bisque. Then it would be followed by a fish course, which would include striped bass in a rich cream sauce or broiled red snapper. Sometimes soft-shelled crab or lobster were also served. They were popular choices. And then it would be followed by a principal meat course, such as filet of beef in champagne or mushroom sauce, turkey stuffed with truffles, a boned chicken or roast lamb. Then it would be followed with foie gras stuffed with mushrooms, artichoke hearts, roasted potatoes, puffed pastries filled with asparagus or spinach, and terrapin. This was turtle. Terrapin is turtle. And during that time, terrapin was so popular that turtles were nearly harvested to extinction during that time. So after the turtle, it was followed by something called Roman punch, which not a beverage, it was a rich, icy dessert. After the Roman punch, they would serve then the next course, which was usually the game course, which was capon with truffles, duck or grouse or roast partridge or braised pigeon or venison in wine sauce. And that was always accompanied by a salad like greens, veggies, and perhaps a little shrimp. And then finally, dessert, custard or pudding, followed by cakes, petit four, ices, cheese, and fruit. The beverages would flow freely, variety of wines, champagnes, and liqueurs. And finally, coffee, sparkling water, and liqueurs signaled the end of the meal. At Alva's party, the last guests departed at 6 a.m. The verdict? Well, the New York World said it was an event never equaled in the social annals of the metropolis and, quote, unquestionably the most brilliant and picturesque entertainment ever given in New York. The New York Sun said, quote, the fancy ball, which caused such a stir and din of preparation in fashionable circles for a month or more, was gorgeously accomplished last night. In lavishness of expenditure and brilliancy of dress, it far outdid any ball ever given before in this city. The final cost of the event, $6.8 million in today's currency. Alva was in. Let's talk now about the pattern. I want to share with you a little bit about the way I put this pattern together and how I'd like you to really consider cutting it apart. In the instructions, I suggest putting a highlight between the lines that segment the sections. So here we have section 1, and you know that because the first digit of the unique identifier is a 1. Over here is section 2, right here. Goes 2-1 to 2-7. So I'm going to suggest you put a line of highlighter on either side of this line that separates section 1 and section 2. And then on the line that separates section 2 from section 3. Here is section 3 right here. Here is the line that separates section 4, 5, and 6 from the other half. Finally, the line that separates section 4 from section 5 and section 5 from section 6. Okay, so do you see how these lines only go to the edge of the gemstone? They don't move beyond the perimeter of the gemstone into the background pieces. That's because I want you to cut off the background pieces first and then cut up the gemstone, which means what you'll do is piece the gemstone together, and once you have that entire gemstone put together, then you'll piece the background pieces on. So what I'd like you to do, the first thing after you've assembled your freezer paper pattern is cut off 7-1, 7-2, section 7-3, and 7-4. Okay, and once you do that, then you can begin slicing up the interior of the gemstone by section, sorting it by color code, and then moving through the process to actually piece it together. So just wanted to call your attention to the fact that the first pieces you're going to cut off are the background edges, those curved pieces. And I'm going to encourage you to use hand scissors if you feel that you get more control using hand scissors rather than a rotary cutter for this process. Have fun, you all, and I look forward to seeing your progress on our Facebook page. If you have any questions, reach out to me. I wish you the best. Shine on.